Derby County take to Pride Park once again on Saturday afternoon in a run of fixtures which sees Derby County take to the home field 4 times out of the next 6. This weekend they face up against mid-table Millwall, but are they going to be able to find a way to pick up victory this weekend? Derby County and Millwall go head to head in the early kick-off on Saturday morning. It's going to be a very interesting battle as John Eustace comes face to face with Millwall with his Derby County team. There was obviously some minor changes heading into that game versus QPR, but a big 4-0 thrashing has seen some Derby County fans worried for their future. If we look at the injury list for both sides, Derby County are without Blackett-Taylor, Curtis Nelson and Dejon Brown, with doubts over the fitness of Kane Wilson, Nat Phillips and also David Ozoh. It's going to be very interesting to see what the lineup looks like. You then go over to Millwall. They're missing 3 players: Callum Scanlon, Dan McNamara and Ryan Leonard. It's going to be a very interesting task for Derby County to be able to pull all 3 points. Now, if we look at the recent form of the two sides, you can see that Derby County have not won a game in 2025 and they haven't picked up a victory since December 26th. It's 3 wins in their last 5 with 2 draws versus Oxford and Norwich. That 4-0 thrashing of QPR was John Eustace's first game in charge, but just 1 training session to set the team up for that one. We've had a free week this week, which will hopefully put Derby in a much better position heading into this one versus Millwall. They've seen themselves win 2, draw 2 and lose 1 heading into this fixture. 5-1 thrashing from Plymouth Argyle just a few weeks ago. 2 draws versus West Brom and Preston North End. Victory against Leeds United and QPR are impressive for the Millwall outfit. If we take a look at the league table, both of these two sides are in very indifferent positions, but they're not too far away from each other. A good run of form from Derby County could see them rocket up the table, but Derby County are currently sitting 22nd with 33 games played and 29 points on the board. You look at Millwall currently sitting in 14th. 33 games played, 42 points on the board as of recording. It's a very interesting circumstance which both of these two teams find themselves in. Millwall aren't necessarily in relegation trouble, but are probably just teetering on the edge of a playoff race, whereas Derby County are well within that relegation scrap and need to find a way out as quickly as possible. Plymouth Argyle and Luton Town all have games in hand on Derby County, as do Hull City, Cardiff City and Stoke City. So it's a real big situation for Derby County where they need to put points on the board as quickly as possible, and that is going to come in the form of John Eustace's management. Now, we look at the home form for both of these two sides, and Derby County, who started the season off in an excellent position with their home form. I think they won 4 out of their first 6 home games, but they now find themselves with 6 wins, 3 draws and 7 defeats at home. And if we go to the away form, it's even worse for Derby County. 1 win, 5 draws, 11 defeats. The only team not to win away from home yet is Plymouth Argyle, but Millwall's away form is fairly decent. 3 wins, 8 draws, 5 defeats in 16 games as they head to Pride Park Stadium. Obviously, we look at the last 5 matches, Derby County still find themselves within that drop zone, whereas Millwall find themselves well within that playoff scrap. It's going to be very interesting to see how these two sides line up. If we look at the head-to-heads of both sides and we go back to earlier in the season, Derby County versus Millwall ended in a 1-1 draw, but it was a very unfortunate game for Derby County as they lost Ryan Niambi to a significant knee injury for a large portion of that season, out from October until the end of January. It's going to be very interesting to see how this works out for Derby County heading into this one. 6 wins for them, 8 wins for Millwall and 7 draws across the board. Derby County will be hoping that they can find some form, but where is it going to come from? You look at the squad and there's no real standout names. Obviously, you've got the introduction of the likes of Lars Jørgen Selverson, Harrison Armstrong, Sondre Langas, but where are the goals going to come from and who is going to be able to score them? That is a big question on my lips for Derby County. You head on over to Alex Neil's Millwall side and they've got some fairly decent players within this squad, and you look at that forward line, the likes of Josh Corbin, Macaulay Langstaff, Aaron Connolly, Femi Aziz. There's some really good players within this squad, and are they going to be able to beat Derby? I think it's definitely a massive possibility. The introduction of Luke Kundal as well has been a massive one for them, and obviously the defensive stalwart of Jafat Tanganga and the introduction of Tristan Crammer, a player who Derby County were rumoured to be looking at within that January window. But if we look at the players that Derby County need to watch out for, Duncan Watmore leads the goals charts, Femi Aziz leads the assist charts. It's one where it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these two sides fare up against each other. Millwall, obviously, over the course of recent fixtures, have been sort of playing in a 4-2-3-1 system, which obviously matches up with that of what John Eustace is trying to do. And obviously, John Eustace this week has lost Matt Hamshaw and Andy Warrington, who have stepped away from Derby County. It will be interesting to see if there's any further changes heading into this game versus Millwall for Derby County, and for Millwall as well, because they have some really, really good players in their ranks, and it will be interesting to see who is going to sort of take that mantle for them and really take hold of this game versus Derby County. Your leading ratings for Millwall are Ryan Leonard, Joe Bryan and Jaffa Tanganga. But if we go to Derby County, like, you've still got Erin Cashin in that leading race for the ratings over the course of the season, which is something which isn't going to change anytime soon. But you've got Ibu Adams and Matt Clark, and for me, I think Ibu Adams' rating is way, way too high. He gets a lot of credit for his defensive work and doesn't really get played down for his in-possession work. And that's something which I really want to discuss in this video, because there has been a lot of pressure on Ibu Adams over the course of the last few days since his performance versus QPR. But why has that been? And there's been a consistent theme for me with Ibu Adams, is that he's excellent at winning the ball. He's excellent at picking up possession and being able to sniff out danger. But what he's not good at is then making the right pass afterwards. And it's been a big problem for Ibu across the course of his entire time at Derby County. And for me, I'm unsure why people seem to think this is a new thing. For me, it's not. It was the same in League One. It's the same now. The big difference, though, is that in League One, we probably had the best squad in the league. So losing the ball wasn't necessarily such a big thing. Whereas nowadays, in the Championship, if you're losing the ball in midfield, or if you're ball chasing in midfield like he was against QPR, you get punished. Ilias Chair showed us that. Obviously then the goal at the weekend, the second one, which came from Ibu Adams ball chasing. It's one of those for me where he's going to get sick for this over the course of the next few months. And it's going to be interesting to see how John Eustace utilises the performance of Ibu Adams and utilises the likes of Kenzo Houdmine and even that of Jerry Yates. And for me, I think there's a situation where by the end of this season, Ibu Adams is not a starter for Derby County and maybe a player who potentially gets moved on in the summer, whichever division we are in. It's going to be massive to actually see what John Eustace tries to do with this squad, because if you go into the QPR game and we look at it in a little bit more detail, obviously it was a very, very disappointing performance. But for me, our best player on the night probably came from the lad off the bench in Kenzo Houdmine, who put in some really good passes, was in a really good situation on occasion where he picked up the ball. But the problem is, it's the hospital passes that our defenders and midfielders seem to give each other, where you sort of put yourself in the shit, really. And it is really disappointing that that was happening, but it was a great reason for Derby County, a great loss in a sense for Derby County, because John Eustace saw everything that he needs to work on immediately. It wasn't like we fluke to win and then we go to Millwall, fluke another win, and then we get battered in the third game of his reign versus Middlesbrough. It was a heavy defeat, one which wasn't unexpected really when you look at QPR and their form recently. But it was a heavy defeat which showed all the flaws of Derby County's games. It showed their soft underbelly. It showed that realistically a lot of the players that played are athletes, not footballers, and that is where we need to change. And that's why by the end of this season, I could quite easily see a midfield of David Ozoh, Kenzo Houdmine and Harrison Armstrong seeing out this season, not necessarily because they've got the defensive capabilities that we necessarily need, but because if we wanted to start games on the front foot and score an early goal, we need technical ability in the squad, and we've got that in abundance with the likes of Harrison Armstrong, Kenzo Houdmine and David Ozoh. You obviously then got the likes of Ben Osborne, Liam Thompson, Ibu Adams, Marcus Harness, who can come off the bench and shore up the performance and add a bit of a defensive element. Obviously Marcus Harness less of the defensive element, but he could you can rotate Harness and Kenzo, and and or harness an Armstrong and sort of really build into that sort of tactical attacking mindset that we're trying to add to Derby County. The forward line is going to be a problem over the course of the rest of the season. There was some talk about free agents after the game versus QPR, but as of recording right now, nothing has been agreed, nothing has been signed, and we haven't heard anything about anybody training or potentially being in for a medical or anything like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that develops over the course of the next few weeks. Now, obviously, there's some big questions to be asked over the course of this next week. I think, what is it? We've got Millwall Saturday, Middlesbrough the Saturday after, then it's Tuesday back at home versus Blackburn, and then it's Coventry at home on the Tuesday, Plymouth away, and then we head into that international break. It's going to be very interesting to see what Derby County do over the course of the next 6 games into that international break. As I mentioned prior, 3 of those, well, it's 5 games, sorry, 3 of those 5 games are at home. Obviously, if you add in the game after the international break, that's 4 of the next 6 at home, which is going to be massive for Derby County. But can John Eustace make the most of the Pride Park crowd? Can he get a couple of wins on the board and pull Derby County out of relegation trouble? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video.